Hey guys, thanks for joining me. And I want to introduce my new podcast, The Power of People. Been working on this for a while, so I hope you enjoy it. The great interviews for everyday successful people just like you and me, giving it back to the keys to success so you can take whatever you need from it, enjoy it. Hope you enjoy these interviews. They're pretty great. Welcome back. It's the Power of People show. Have you seen it? We got the banner up, the new banner up in here. Yo. So listen, I got a special treat for you guys today. Hey, it's one of the guys that I told you I was going to bring you guys these exclusive interviews from here, far and near, and one of the greatest people that I know that's walking around this planet like an angel on earth, right? Hey, this is my guy. He started out on this journey with me a while back when I still created this thing. And I'm bringing him back around because he deserves it. From the beginning to the end, I'm bringing him back. I want to welcome my guy to the show, Dr. Taj Eldridge from all the way from California. Welcome.
What's going on, Ray? How's it going? And one of the things he probably forgot to mention, we are both members of the greatest fraternity in the world, Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. So definitely.
Shout out to the noobs.
Shout out 8 to 5.
Yeah, shout out to the noobs, 8 to 5, the Bloodthirsty Hammer Champ, the back of East Texas A&M now. Used to be Texas A&M Commerce and East Texas State. One of the greatest schools that's out there, when it all started. Give my boy a clap for that. Yes, sir. I got a one yo for you. Yo. All right. So let's get into this thing, man. Taj, how you been? It's good to see you, man. Long time.
Yeah, it's good. It's always good to have connection back to home because I've been out in California for the last, 26 years, and before that, Las Vegas. And so always good to connect, and always good to connect here, man. And I appreciate the fine words you said, but more importantly, man, it's not about me, it's about the people. And that's what this show is about. That's what this whole thing is about, So excited to talk with the people here through you as well.
Awesome. Appreciate that. Hey, I'm glad you said that about the people, Taj. You're one of the most inspirational guys to me that has really motivated, inspired me over throughout the years. I know it's in my younger journey, you probably didn't know that, as I watched you and watch how you moved, and we got more familiar with each other as as brothers, which we've been for a while. And man, you're like my mentor. Tell everybody that's my mentor. That's a guy that I look at and see and inspires me no matter what mood I'm in. So just to give you those flowers.
Man, I appreciate it because someone before you inspired me, right, from my own chapter. Giving out to Christopher Bivens, who in business, and one of the chapter came from our chapter as well. But the great Nipsey Hussle said one thing, man. If you look around your circle of friends or frat brothers and you don't get inspired, you don't have a circle of friends, you have a cage.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that we all are surrounded by brothers who are the inspiration for a lot of things that we're doing. It's continuing as time goes on as well.
Awesome. Yeah, man. Thank you for giving that back and with the great wisdom that you have. So let's get in here. Hey, Taj. So tell the people your full name, what you're doing for a living, where you're from, where you grew up. Tell them a little bit about your childhood and all about you. Introduce yourself to the people.
Absolutely. Definitely, Ray. And again, I appreciate this opportunity to talk with the audience and to engage and definitely, really talk about the journey, but also to learn from the journey from both of us and everything else, So my full name is Taj Ahmad Eldridge. My first and middle name are Arabic. So Taj means crown in Arabic, which I was wearing. Yeah.
Hats.
And so I grew up in Dallas, Texas, specifically in the Alta Mesa area. People are familiar with that. I went to Wilma Hutchins School District. It wasn't part of DISD. It was Wilma Hutchins. And so I'm a proud graduate of that. But at one point in time during my high school career, I attended Carter High School. So
Great Carter. The great Dallas Carter. Okay.
Absolutely. And so definitely, came out of there, with the class 93, loving it. The neighborhood I actually grew up in, Spud Webb's family lived on our block. So
Man.
definitely, one of the things I saw for us as people there was sports,
Yeah. Yes.
selling things, So I had several cousins in that space. And so it's interesting that, for me, when I was in high school, when we were talking about, what we want to be in the world, I always like writing. I was into music. So that's one of the reasons I was studying poetry and literature when I got into to college at East Texas State, which is now East Texas University. And so that was kind of my forward. And I actually put out an album. A lot of people don't know because I scrubbed it from the internet. So there's still some remnants there. When I was 16, I put out an album, and God bless my mother because she was instrumental in that. It was my cousin and I performing. I had
Man.
another in the group. And my mom would take us to the studio, stay with us in the studio because I couldn't drive at the time. And it's just man, dedicated. So definitely give a shout out to all those moms who helped their kids follow those dreams. And that's definitely inspired me as a father. And so when I graduated from East Texas State, like I mentioned, I was in poetry and literature, and I thought I was going to work for a newspaper. I'm gonna say some names that might be a little bit age for folks, but there are
Man.
folks who are seasoned for us. We used to have two newspapers in Dallas. We used to have
You're
the
going
Dallas,
back now. Look at you.
we have
Throwback.
right. So I thought I was going to be a journalist, kind of coming up, but I ended up working in banking. I worked for Wells Fargo Bank, and actually got some of our other fraternity brothers who worked there as well. My line brother, guy who plays alongside of me, Stephen Coleman, initially worked
Okay.
with
Yeah.
Wells Fargo as well. And so we both were there. And as both of us are in finance now, he owns in the finance world as myself.
Yeah. Steve is a good
I know,
guy. Yeah. I like Steve.
so definitely instrumental guy to get on. And so there, Wells Fargo Bank, I was in consumer banking. And I would say, I started out back in the day. I think they still have them, but literally, Steven and I, we were working in a grocery store at the bank. We were you would come and get your cheese and your pizza and stuff, and we'd be there like, yeah, open an account. And so
Young marketing right back there.
it's an interesting time to try to convince people that, yeah, we're real people, banking in the grocery store. And even at the time, and again, I'm saying my age, ATMs were relatively new because a lot of people didn't really understand it, didn't really trust putting their money into a machine. And we spent a lot of our time cross-referencing across educating people from giving me the money that you want to deposit, taking out the money from me and get
Man.
into ATM. So it was an interesting time. But what I didn't realize, Ray, was that it introduced me to technology. And again, we're talking about pre-iPhone. This was the early 90s, mid 90s. And so
So you was on the
uh,
Nokias back then.
yeah,
The
yeah,
big boy.
it was really early, right? Did that for a number of years. Actually, ended up leaving Texas in 1998. Graduated college in 1997. I left Texas in 1998, and literally, I was a roommate with my line brother Stephen, who also worked at the Wells, as well as another fraternity brother of ours, Stephen Foster. We all worked at Wells Fargo. We all were living together as roommates. And one day, I woke up and I said, "I'm moving," and I literally had a map on the wall. And I threw a dart on the map. It landed in Nevada. And I'm like, I'm going to Nevada. And both of the Steves thought I was playing.
Wow.
And I ended up the next morning, I said, "Hey, anybody come with me?" And they couldn't go. So another one of our fraternity brothers named Sage Truitt, who actually went to college with me, ended up going. His girlfriend was in California. And so we packed up my little Geo Metro with nothing but clothes and TVs. And I hit the road
You're
and
giving
we
this
drove
age.
for a good number. I can't even remember back then because I've never made the drive again, but drove through the Panhandle, going through Arizona, New Mexico, ended up in Las Vegas, Nevada. And I ended up the day I got there. And again, for those, this is pre cell phones, pre internet on your cell phone. So I'm literally at the payphone, calling around, looking for apartments to stay in.
Whoa.
And I ended up getting the apartment when I got there. Didn't have it before. Literally got there and got the apartment. The next call I made was to Wells Fargo to say, "Hey, I moved to Vegas. Can I have a transfer?" And so it was definitely, I think, a start in this idea of risk taking that I was open to, which would lead into my later career. And that was really interesting, man. And I tell the story a lot, and I think it was nothing but faith and luck that got me into this space because it was by happenstance. And spent some time in Vegas working in banking again with Wells Fargo Bank. And then I moved to California about in 1999. Started working there as well at Wells Fargo Bank, where I got married at and eventually had kids. And it was interesting, because again, I never thought I would live in California and never thought I'd live in Vegas, but the opportunity arose and I took those opportunities. And I think that idea of risk and opportunity taking kind of ended up again in my later career. For some time there, I went into investment banking or asset management with the Union Bank of Switzerland called UBS Bank
Yeah.
in Hills, California. And that's when I started getting into this area that I never heard before
Oh,
called
man.
venture capital, venture capital private equity.
Okay, so man, that's a nice journey, man. And the journey along the way, man, that's one of those things that when I hear you talk about it, and that's a proud journey. One of those things that's very inspiring for like everyday people, like the people like that looks just like as young, like a young African American like me, or just the everyday young people growing up in the inner city, right?
Yeah.
And like we say, you went to Waxahachie, a little bit right outside the inner city. You grew up out there, coming from the outside and coming to the inner city and going to college and then going back to the big city. So, hey, you kind of live that life and the transitioning of it. So it looks like it's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, because I think in our neighborhoods, we didn't have a lot of examples of people in these industries. We had
Right.
examples of men who were working and who created, a good life for their families. And I think that was important. Like my grandfather, my maternal grandfather worked on the construction side. So I think that, even getting into alternative finance is really interesting for me because again, I never heard about it. Ironically, I would say though, reading a book early on, and I totally forgot about it until I actually got into the space. There's another fraternity member of ours named Reginald F. Lewis. Reg- Folks don't know Reginald F. Lewis is one of the first black male billionaires
Gotcha.
in the United States, and he passed away in 1983 when I graduated. I ran across his book. Ironically, his book is called "Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun?" And this brother ended up, launching his own for, private equity investment fund. And I learned about private equity then, but I just kind of put it to the side because it was so foreign. But when I got to California and I made the transition from investment banking with UBS into venture capital, first as an angel investor and then next in venture capital, that book was in the back of my mind. And I realized that, wow, like sometimes your steps are ordered and things happen on a certain time and not your time. And I think that my career in finance, my degree in poetry and literature, my risk taking, like I mentioned, from Texas to Nevada to California, the opportunistic piece of that, all those things are what venture capital is about taking risks, understanding risk, and understanding how to measure that and to invest against it and look for opportunities. And so I think, those things that we see sometimes happen to us, those journeys are journeys that might be beneficial in the short term, in the long term, that you might not see in the short term.
Right. Yeah. Just like you said, for me, I didn't have those examples, like you said, from coming from I'm a country boy. Coming from the country boy, going to school in the country, then coming to the inner city. And then growing up in predominant white schools where we was less than 1% of the student body at the school, right? And for my family, I didn't have those examples where I didn't see other people's doing it, right? My grandfather, he was a mechanic, but he was what they used to call shade tree mechanics. You're right in the backyard, right? You have the big tree, everybody through the neighborhood or the community come through and they get the car fixed on. He ran this little business like that. Remember in my grandma's backyard, we had a big slab of concrete. You could tell, for just slab of concrete, nothing but dirt. And he'll just, put the chain on the big tree and lift out people motors, right? That was the only first example of success that I had, right? I'm looking forward to that. And everyone else not going over to school, besides in my uncles, as far as they went was junior college, and didn't expand outside of the branch, expand outside of the community, right? For hearing, taking risk, we wasn't taught how to take risks, right? Everything was on survival for the family. You need to go in this way, or you need to get a job and work, to survive.
Yeah. But Ray, I would say this too. I think it was there, but it was disguised in a different way. And I
Right.
think like you talk about your father, your grandfather, and being that, what we all in the South, we hear this term shade tree mechanic
Yeah. But it was a
as a,
business.
yeah, exactly. Now what I hear is entrepreneur,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
And I think about, me growing up and I mentioned, there was the three pathways, sports, music, and then selling things. And those
Yeah.
things, fortunate at the time, illegal substances. But when you really think about it, a lot of my cousins were in that space. A lot of the folks we knew around us who were in that space. They were
In
really great
Los Angeles.
salesmen. They were really great in business development. They were just selling the wrong product. And I
Same
think
here.
that while some might say,
Oh,
well, it's easy to sell a product that you can be addicted to. And I would conversely say, well, isn't food addictive? Isn't
yeah.
prescription medicine
Yeah, let's give
addictive?
it a
So yes,
second
there are
here. I
products
think
that are
we
addictive that people still sell.
so yeah,
And
we'll
we
give it a
just never had
second.
the
We're gonna have
opportunity as
Taj
a
come
people
back in
to
here real
translate
quick.
those skills that we have
I
that are
think we just
innate, whether it's in sports or
we'll be
in
right
music, but also in
we're gonna be
business. And we're
right back
seeing
with
that.
us.
And so I think that that's been one of the things that's been really
As you
interesting to
think
me.
it's
I even have a cousin,
having a
shout
little
out to my cousin JR.
service. But
We
yeah,
talk a
just like what
lot,
Taj was saying,
Jeffrey Eldridge Jr.
it's
And,
disguised
it's
as a different
interesting. I
way.
hope he don't get mad at me saying this, but I
It's
know
still a
he's proud,
business.
just like
Most
I'm
of us
proud. No, he's a
don't
blood,
realize that
and I got
this is
this pit.
still a business that we're working on, and it's necessarily not just shown that way. And we don't really understand that because what you don't know is what you don't know, right? And that's where we go have to, get educated and learn that, hey, you're actually working a business entrepreneurship, and we may not have the legalized way of the paperwork, but you're something that they can learn from and take from it. Then once you learn the ins and outs, you can take it and go with it wherever you need to go with it. But that is part of, growth risk. But you just got to be willing to go for that. But it looks like we got my guy Taj back.
But
Yeah.
I'm a state. I think that was the ghost of the feds telling me don't snitch.
No, you good. Just went into so you got back, to that. What we were just talking about the mechanic entrepreneurship, how you seen it in entrepreneurship and without us being educated, not really knowing how to fit that in a educated term ways till we get more educated to learn that. But I was just going in a little bit of that. But go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely.
You lost the train of thought. But
No. I did. I'm closing these other Riverside tabs for us. Technology,
gotcha.
but
They
the
popping
good
up everywhere telling you about what you're saying.
talks like this is these are authentic talks. These are talks that you have on this show where things happen. But also, this is an example of you might have sideways things that happen in life, and you have to recover and keep moving, right? So perfect. So I guess when people do this episode, definitely keep that in mind. But I was saying that my cousin, who's a member of the Bloods, there's a picture of he and I throwing. He's throwing his sign, and I'm throwing the sign that it's fraternity of you and I, that we do.
Hey
And
man, you're a steam man. They ain't gonna like that.
I was saying
They're not gonna like that.
that when you really think about it, that's his tribe. This is group that he's with. Those are the people he grew up with. That they do together. This is our tribe, and we're in. And I think the only thing that separates us is opportunity. There's this phrase that said talent is universal. And my cousin is very talented, but opportunity is not. And I think that I just had that opportunity to take that risk. I mentioned how my mom was there when I was doing music. I mentioned how I traveled outside of Texas and was able to get into this space. And so I had the opportunity, but we both had the talent. And I always think about that as well with our people, both young and old, where they may have had the talent, but not the opportunity. And now we have the opportunity and the talent, and we need to ensure that we're sharing this information. So it's talent, opportunity, and action that we need to do.
Yeah, and that's a big deal about sharing information. That's a lot, as where we coming from. People don't think it's always one of those. It's what you don't know and what you think you know, right? And without people giving you back, sharing that information with you, and just thinking like eventually you're not ready for it. You're too young for it, like stay at a young place or stay at a young place, or this is grown folks' business, or just doesn't think that you're intellectual to understand where it's going. And I think that with, like you say, with technologies and opportunities these times and days, the younger generations are just looking for those opportunities. It's not necessarily that needing to know the true information. They just using the opportunity and learning as they go. I just think about, back in the days where my days, which I'm much younger than you, but just think about if they had the technology back then that created their own opportunity, not without the gatekeepers, right? So that would mean like the gatekeeper was holding the information and only gave it to who they thought was deemed worthy
Yeah,
enough, right? And
absolutely.
and that's what I hear you saying, like when you were just saying what you were just saying with your cousin.
Yeah. And I think, things like this podcast is a perfect example of that, of the folks who come in this podcast, they talk about their backgrounds. And I think one person may think them just talking about themselves, but I think other says to that there's an information exchange about their pathway, and information exchange about the industry that they're in. and the information exchange is people are listening to these podcasts and listening to people speak here, and they're having these conversations when they, online or social media, or engaging with Power to People magazine, or everything else. So I think that again, the intersection of talent, opportunity, action, and knowledge are very important.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, man. Thanks for sharing that. Thanks for sharing that. Now, with going out now after these years, when we started this podcast and magazine. Well, I started the magazine years ago, but 5 years started with doing the podcast. And I know 4 years ago, before I had my son, Ray, which is 5 now, he'll be 6 in next month, you was one of the first interviews that I did. The first person I could think of. I was like, hey, this guy got so much information and he's willing to share, let me give it back to that. Now, bringing you back this time to the podcast, you're helping me kick this thing off again, and I appreciate that. So with those over the time, I would say, give me those 3 adjectives that you would describe yourself now in this time over after, I guess, after the last 5 years. What would you, how would you describe yourself and your 3 strengths and 3 adjectives that describe your strengths?
So this last 5 years, yeah, it's interesting. I think, let's see, when did we talk? Was it 2018 when we talked?
Yeah. I think it was 2017 going into 18. Yeah.
So
Yep.
what's interesting about that, which the reason I'm mentioning it because the day is very important. So, I'll tie this in too. So, after being at UBS, like I mentioned, got into venture capital. For those that don't know, venture capital is basically where investors take money from other investors. That can be pension funds, they could be foundations. So, as an example, some of our investors included Microsoft, Visa Foundation, Sierra Club, and you take the money, you invest either in new founders and technologies, the vertical, the sector that you're in, or in our case, we invested in different venture funds, other venture funds that would in turn invest in companies. And I'm what's called a climate VC, which means where I invest in things that are about sustainability. And I've
Right.
been doing it for a while, 15 plus years. And
Man.
I think
That's a ride.
now people may not think about it, and then your mind strictly goes to electric vehicles or maybe solar panels. But the hat that I'm wearing, the suit that I'm wearing, all has a climate pinch to it, because climate is about how we utilize our resources. So I'll say all that to get to the 5 years and your question. So after we had that conversation in April 1st, 2018, I was diagnosed with a disease called focal segmental glomerulosclerosis. What it is a kidney disease. And it's a kidney disease that are 2 things. It's genetic, number 1. 3 of my other cousins had the same disease. And number 2, it's exacerbated by environmental factors, meaning that where you grew up, where you live, can make it a little bit more difficult given the things that are around you. And
Yeah.
so when I think about climate, again, it's more than just about saving the planet, it's about saving ourselves. So I was diagnosed in 2018. I was diagnosed at stage 5. And even the story is really interesting. And again, goes back about the opportunity. I have been tired, and the symptoms for this disease, just in case folks may not be warning, for me, it's a silent disease, right? Because the symptoms were like you were very tired, initially, on, and when I was getting checked, 10 years prior, I was trying to get what's called keyman insurance. And what that insurance is, an insurance that entrepreneurs get to cover their businesses. It
Gotcha.
covers if anything happens to you as an entrepreneur, then your business gets the money, it can continue. So I was denied, and I was like, wow, well, I'm denied. So I'm going back to my doctor, and it was like, oh, we don't understand. And so time went on, and I was out talking to this doctor who was a nephrologist, and she was saying, you're tired, and you got a lot of protein that's coming in your as you urinate. She's like, yeah, that's where you should get a biopsy. And at the time, I had no idea what biopsy. I don't even know where to start. I got a biopsy, and I was stage 5, which is the last stage of kidney failure. So had
Man.
I not met her, had I not had that conversation, had I not had the opportunity, wouldn't be here probably, because I would have been immediately at kidney failure, probably away from it. Like 2 of my other cousins passed away from kidney failure, one in the 90s, one in the 2000s. And then at the end, it was myself and one of my other cousins who've been sick with kidney failure for 10 years, and I didn't know. Uh,
Wow.
she was back in Fort Worth. The sister of the brother I just mentioned, JR.
Yeah.
So 2018 was a really year of discovery for me, because I was sick and I had to make a decision. Going to dialysis, if anybody in your listeners have dealt with it, it's hard. It's very hard. It's difficult. And I did it, first at home dialysis, where I had to be by myself, and it was very depressing. And I had to make a decision do I continue work and the work I'm doing because I did a lot of travel at the time, or what? And ironically, I ended up 2 years later from that in 2020, going into 2021, I opened up my own fund with two of my partners,
Gotcha.
include Vic. And I did it while I was sick, while I was in dialysis. I would take meetings while I'm in the dialysis chair, having
Man,
my blood cleaned. And so that whole experience from the last 5 years, from 2017 to 2023, I guess at 22, really taught me a few things about resilience. It taught me a few things about, you know, one of the things that people often hear about us in this fraternity is that we under pressure excel.
cells.
And I did, and that was a lot of pressure being under, and I'm proud that I was able to launch a fund with my partners that was able to invest in a number of things. I did a lot of speaking opportunities, literally flying to China, to Paris. While I'm sick, I would have dialysis on a Friday, in the morning, 4 a.m. to 9 a.m., and then get on the plane at 11, and then go out and speak the next day on a Saturday, come back on a Sunday because time changes coming flying back, to the US, and then go back to dialysis on Monday. And I did that for years. And even in the pandemic, when things shut down, I was doing it even more so because of the lack of being able to have dialysis care at other places. Now, luckily, and again, the value of the frat and going back to this idea of opportunity, I was able to get a transplant in 2023. So I was only on dialysis for 5 years, from 2018 to 2020.
It's a long
And
time.
ironically, the person who I have, who was my donor, who saved my life, is the wife. We called them silhouettes of my two players at the same time I did at University of Southern California. Emily
Man,
McGowan is my donor, and her husband Rob McGowan was my original donor, but he couldn't donate, so his wife ended up donating for me. That saved my life. And so, for me, the fraternity has played such a crucial role in my growing up. From like I mentioned, with Reginald Lewis to Christopher Bivens, who was our chapter brother, to even the person who saved my life and his wife, Rob McGowan. And so that is why I think a lot of times people look at fraternities and think we're all about being pretty, and we are. I think it's all about stepping in cane, but at the end of the day, it's about love. And I think that was an important part of me. So to answer your question, the last 5 years was a lot of discovery,
okay.
resilience, a lot of growth, and finally, a lot of having a second life. Where now I'm at 50, I'm looking at
Yeah.
things a bit different now as well.
Hold on, man. You said you how old now? No,
50, brother.
I can't even tell, man. You don't even look it, man. It looks like you done turned the hand back to
It,
time.
Gen Xers, shout out to all the Gen Xers out there listening. We're making it. We got to show these millennials and Gen Zs how to do it at our age.
Oh, that's funny, man. That's funny. But no, you look good, man. And those are great. I think those describe you perfectly, actually. Because you won resilience, going through all of that, and you prospered. Prosperity is everything. I see that all over you, man. And just to learn the journey, I remember back then during those times, when I was calling you, and you was telling, you would just take the time out to just have a short conversation with me when you was in the chair. And I was very fond of that, because I was a man over here fighting for his life, and you taking a moment it's just to have a conversation with me. I'm trying to get started, and you over here trying to figure out where you going at the same time, where you going, and how to keep going forward in your life.
Yeah. But
That
those
was a
conversations gave me life,
yeah.
and I would say that too for anybody that's listening. If you have any family members, or if you don't, go down to your local dialysis center, just sit with people. Because I think those conversations allow people who are going through that to take their mind off of what they're going through. Because it's a difficult disease that some people don't make it even while they're going through dialysis. My cousin, perfect example, she ended up passing away in 2022, 21, I believe. I can't remember, one of the two, and passed away in hospice. And so I think that again, that reach out from you to me helped me. I don't think you, and I've never told you this, but it helped me more than it helped you at the
Oh
time.
man, appreciate that. I appreciate that. It really means a lot to me, especially, man. You're gonna don't make me cry today. I ain't
Yeah.
trying to do it.
That's one thing we as black men need to do: be more emotional. Definitely.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. It's crazy, that you talk about, how the frat has been a help towards you, and been a blessing towards you, because I remember when I was going through undergrad, and one of the frat brothers, I think his name Eric. Eric works with the One family, the radio station, Radio One, and I think he had a similar situation as yours, where he was having kidney failure, and through him being a part of the fraternity, I think he got with the Shriner. He started shrining and all of those, and do those benefits that he got through those organizations and going through those. I think he was able to get a new kidney as well that saved his life. That's kind of, man, that's crazy to hear that story in your story. And it didn't even resonate with me until you just repeated your story. Cause, I remember, I think we had a random conversation. I had a random conversation with him, and I haven't seen him in a while. And it was right in the beginning of it when his career was getting good. And he was one of the producers at Radio One
Yeah.
here in Dallas.
Yeah.
And he was just talking about it. And I was just very, shocked by it. You never think of people around you or in your peer group or around and just in your circle. You never know what they're going through, right? And if you don't really reach out to them and have those
Yeah.
conversations, you just
Yeah.
never know. I think it's very
But I'll
important.
tell you this, when I was going through my scenario, I was very public about it. I was extremely public. I did podcasts, I did interviews, I was on TV shows around my illness because I wanted to do three things. Number one, I wanted to bring awareness to the disease because it's a disease that impacts a lot of African Americans and a lot of us suffer in silence. Like my cousins did. I never knew that my three cousins had kidney failure. And had I known, I think I would have been a little bit more ahead of the curve in preventative measures, or not even preventative, but understand the risks that are there. Again, going back to the term of risk. Number two, the reason I did it was because, as I was starting my company, if you're starting as an investor and you're starting a company, your health is a huge part of whether or not your investors will invest in you. They want to know that there's somebody who's going to be leading the company that is healthy enough to do it. And so I disclosed it because for me, at the very beginning, transparency was important to the partners I was working with. So I did that and sometimes, some of my colleagues said I shouldn't have done it, but I was very proud I did it. And
They say you
ironically,
shouldn't have, and it made you vulnerable.
yeah,
Saying to make you vulnerable to people.
but I would tell you, God willing, my career took off like crazy,
Man,
during the time I was sick. And so it was definitely a benefit. And I think number three, the reason I did it, and years later, I hear from others who are saying about it, there are so many people in different industries that are going through things. I had people going through cancer and they approached that whole scenario different because they saw me thriving while being sick. So so I think a lot of times too, a lot of times we do things, um, sometimes for ourselves, but also we don't realize the things that we do for that benefit and impact others. And I think at the end of the day, that's what people is about having that impact that we see.
yeah, I agree with you. That goes back to that information is what you're saying. Like you're saying, you was able to be vulnerable enough, but at the same time, you're giving a lot of information, and you was giving information back to people, not knowing who it may have helped, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes, like you say, what you've been in the professional and been in the work can take a toll. Like I say, sometimes it could be killing us, not even knowing that it's killing us,
Yeah.
physically
Yeah.
wise, and just for, you give it that information, some people may not even recognize that they even got that going on with them. So yeah, that's dope. Dope, good information, man. Tell us a little bit about this hat, though, man. I'm just this hat is nice, man, and you're a man of many hats, but I
Yeah.
love this hat you got on. Go to give me a little insight on that.
I appreciate that. Well, first I would say, I think I told your audience, I was in music. So I did an album when I was younger. I think I was 16. And so music has always been a part of my life and my journey and the way I looked at things, even with the work I do with now in venture capital. For those who do not understand venture capital, let me break it down from a music standpoint. Forgive me for using names, may not be popular at the moment, but think about Big.
But you got free range.
So
Go
when you
ahead.
think about Notorious Biggie,
Okay.
and I think different generations know this guy. He's an artist. The artist is creating. He creates music, and he also created visuals with that music, so videos that push it through. The artist is like an entrepreneur. Entrepreneur, whether they're building a product or a service, they're selling something to an audience who are their customers, right? Biggie didn't put out that music until he got signed to a label. That label helped him finance that music to put it out and package it. The entrepreneur, similarly, works with a venture capital fund to finance what he's building, or he or she is building to put it out. And so there's a relationship between the artist and the label, and the founder and the venture capital fund. Now, I'll say that to say that there are some artists, and we know, let's say Big X the Plug, the young folks may know him.
Hey man,
Who's
he in trouble right now. But go ahead.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's all I'm trying to.
Recent news. But go ahead.
But
No, I like that because
you need to come to California where it's
you
legal.
giving it back from home, from Dallas, and hey,
Yeah.
you giving it back from home. Go ahead.
Yeah. But he's an independent artist, right? So he is not necessarily signed to a label. Similarly, you have companies that are built without the need of venture capital, because venture capital is not the only way to build your company. So I will say that. And so I think there's this connection. So bringing it back to music is important. So people see on this hat, I don't know if you can see it, there are lyrics on it, and the lyrics are to an Outkast song called "Spotty Oddie Dopalicious," that people may know. And so all of my hats, they're made by this hat maker called out of Brooklyn, called NTTE hats, not of this world, or NTTE hats out of NYC, Brooklyn. And he's a guy that loves music as well. So all of my hats have a music tinge to it. Either there are lyrics on it, if you can see, there's a guitar pick for those who know guitars.
Yeah.
So all of my hats have something that reminisce of music. And then I have other hats that he's made for me where he's taken waste, trash, literally, and put it as part of the decoration for the hat. So I have hats that have like belly beads on them, or ripped up bandanas, or, dried dead roses that people discarded. And so I think that, when I wore these hats, number one, it's crown. I remember mentioning that my
Yeah.
name, Taj,
Okay.
means crown. But number two, it gives me an opportunity to tell the story about environmentalism, about climate to different communities, and show that climate is cool. It doesn't have to be what people think about as, crunchy granola tree huggers. It is this fly folks who just understand the utilization of resources. And so I think that that's one of the reasons I tend to wear them a lot. And then lastly, I would tell you this too, even though I've been in finance for some decades, at the end of the day, whether you're in finance, whether you're in podcasting, image matters. When you turn on your TV and you look at the people on TV, you look at the weather people, you look at the newscasters, whether you're looking at in Dallas, Channel 4, 5, or 8, I think it's still there. All of them, there's a pattern, right? You have a pattern of people that are there. Pattern breeds familiarity to make you familiar with it. And so I think the same thing for me is too, I've often say I wear many hats, both literally and figuratively, because not only am I an investor, I've managed some grants that's been around the climate space. I've influenced a lot of different people in the climate space. I've started an organization called Green Tech Noir with other partners. We co-founded it, myself and others, and has over 500 members that are in it. Black folks all across the world, not just in the U.S., but getting into the climate space. And so, being able to speak in Dubai, China, and all the other things, where when people see the hat, they recognize the brand, so to speak. And so,
It's kind of
it's
your
a
brand.
process with it as well.
Yeah. It's kind of like your own little style of brand and your touch on it,
Yeah.
on the venture.
Exactly. And again, for me, it allows the branding is as important as the story, and everything falls back to storytelling. And so there's a purpose to the hat. There's a stories around the hat, similar to when you have some folks who have different type of brands or stories around the brands as well.
Nice. Nice. Man, that's a good one. That's a good one. Cause, man, bing, yeah, lights going off. Here you go again. You just make something when a light bulb just went out when I was just having this conversation, just yesterday with my wife, and I was telling her about, um, how certain branding, certain information at the right time, the way you brand it to give it, and it brings back the eyes back to whatever you're selling, your product, or whatever it is that you're putting in an atmosphere. It goes back to how you brand the information to whatever it
Absolutely.
is. Yeah.
Absolutely. One caveat I missed during my journey after I ended up working in banking and in venture capital. Like I said, what got me to venture capital is I was part of a number of different startups as well. One of the startups that was acquired called Textopoly, that was in mobile marketing, early BlackBerry days, and another company that was in the fashion space. And that's what actually got me into environmentalism, was fashion. I used to work with this brand called Boswell, who was founded by the late designer or Air Boswell, that most people may remember or know from being one of the greatest designers for men's basketball, who really turned how men in the NBA were dressing. So,
Yeah.
in that process, I started seeing a lot of the waste that's in the industry of fashion and apparel. And that's what got me to climate, a number of years ago, over 15 years ago. And so I think that, again, marketing was a huge part of apparel, part of what we did at Boswell, and translated to the other businesses that was in. And you hear these stories, right? Like Barry Gordy, for people who don't know, might be a little younger, who founded Motown. He said he was influenced by the auto industry and how the auto industry created their assembly lines. So he had assembly lines of musicians that created their product. And so I say that to say that I think that most of the great entrepreneurs, they are voracious with education and studying and looking at other things outside of what they're doing, because you never know what can influence the work you're currently doing that is outside of the scope that you're doing as well, and beat your competitors, really.
Yeah, yeah, right. No, no, that's great. That's great. So we're talking about hip hop
Mhm.
and your venture capital journey. Man, what influence on hip hop had you experienced with venture capital? I know you don't work with many artists, but give the people how how hip hop, how the culture and venture capital ride together, and and how your experience has been.
Absolutely. One of the other reasons I dress the way I dress, I wear jewelry. I don't have my, you can't see my chain,
Hey,
but you
hey,
know,
you don't have to be iced. Hey,
um,
we know you got the ice. We know you. Hey, you don't.
but I would say the ice is sustainable because it's made from carbon that's been captured in the air.
There you go.
No knock on Rick Ross, but ain't nothing wrong with lab diamonds because they're actually better for the environment, and no people are getting killed for them. But I would say that in my career, there's a really big firm, venture capital firm called Andreessen Horowitz. Mark Andreessen, for those who may not know, he founded Netscape back in the day, which of course became the precursor of what we have with the internet. And his venture firm is, a large venture firm. And one of the guys there, uh, in Horowitz, white guy, he grew up in Queens, actually, in Queensbridge area. He was one of the first guys in our industry to quote hip hop. And it's interesting for a lot of us who, like myself, who grew up in the 70s, who in it, as we go into corporate life, we ended up speaking differently. We end up talking differently, and we end up, doing things that when we code switch, for lack of a better word, we're
I was
one way
about
to
to
work.
say that we call it code switch. That new
Right.
generation.
And so I think that for me, when I got into venture capital, because it came through apparel, and our apparel brand was definitely within the culture. It was definitely regarded as such. I didn't know any other way to be but that. And so it was just interesting to come into this space and have this own type of, swag, as the kids say these days.
E
And I say, to your point about the connection of hip hop and venture capital, we have another fraternity brother. His name Rashawn Williams. Really shout out to Rashawn, who went to Morehouse and pledged there. When I met him, we met up through apparel because our company, we actually did clothes for Nas. That's how I ended up meeting Nas and Jermaine Dupri and so many other people in the music industry. And when I worked at UBS, I worked in the area. We had a lot of entertainers, of course, because we were in Beverly Hills. But Nas ended up opening a venture capital fund called Queensbridge Ventures, and
man,
Rich Williams is the guy who ran that at the time, along with Nas's manager Anthony Saleh. And so that for me was the first intersection between venture capital and hip hop, specifically in this space. Years later, decade and 12 years later, you have 15, I think even more 15. You have more than other types of musicians, even basketball players. Baron Davis, who played for the NBA, is a really good friend of mine and has a fun of both invested together on a couple of things. Pusha T, which I'm a huge Clips fan, and again, shout out to the Gen Xers. He's an investor in a number of different technology companies, including one that's founded by one of our other fraternity brothers, Josh and Vive, called Spark Charge.
okay. Oh
So
yeah,
that's been a really telling story about how hip hop and venture capital have been combining lately. Because again, it's the influence. Another company that we invested in and got acquired was invested in by Jay-Z. It's called Altro. It's a fintech company. So shout out to Michael Bolton, that's the founder there. But
nice.
then again,
I didn't even know he was in the venture capital. You haven't even heard about it yet. He got his hands in everything.
some money, yeah. So and there's so many artists that are in it who are understanding it, and there's more. And it's interesting enough, to you saying that, I've spent the last 25 years or plus, I would say, in the finance world, from investment banking to commercial banking to venture capital. And now, like I mentioned, as I'm turning 50, one of the things I'm realizing is that, success is more than about money. Success is also about purpose, and it's also about joy, right? A lot of times We were stressed out. And the other thing that I would say after having a kidney failure and then having a transplant, what I've learned is that life is short, number one. And number two, I'm going to value, be selfish with all of my time, meaning that I'm going to do the things that I would like to do, that I want to do, as opposed to what I have to do. And so that leads me to, I think people have been knowing this, that me kind of leaving the venture capital space, we've made investments in our Include Fund, Fund One.
Hold
And
on,
now,
hold on, hold on, hold on. Let me roll that back. Hold on. I think I just heard you say something that I wasn't ready to hear. Hold
yeah,
on.
man. Yeah.
All
Yeah, man.
right. Now, let's see with the drum roll just coming through. Now, hold on. What was that announcement? Did I just hear a exclusive announcement on here?
Yeah.
I'm gonna run them drums back one more time, and you go where you need to go with that. Here we go.
Yeah. No. I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
All
You, you
right,
know,
Taj.
I haven't talked about this, a lot, but I think, what I've learned, and again, post transplant and post traveling, and especially I'm in the climate space too. And we all know what's happening right at this moment in our country around diversity and climate with the administration. But, one of the things I started thinking about, to your very question about the intersection of hip hop and venture capital. So music has been my mistress for all of my life. It's what made me happy. It's what gave me purpose. And it was aligned to a lot of things that I've done. And so I've decided that, stepping away a bit from venture capital, stepping away from doing the venture capital investing on that end, and I've been doing a lot of media. So, I opened up a company called Taj Media Holdings, and, we're exploring different areas. We have a show that's still again around the climate space that we're developing. Proud to have people like the Schwarzenegger Climate Initiative as partners there, supporting the work that we do.
Is that Arnold?
Yeah.
It's ex-governor Arnold you talking
Yeah, the
about?
governor of California. I had the great opportunity to speak in Vienna, Austria, at his Austrian World Summit about it. And I always joke that he gave me the most club shay-shayest introductions in Vienna. Man, it was so dope. But yeah, so we were looking to develop we're in the process of developing a show that's around the idea of sustainability and technology, and really just helping people, going back to the power of the people literally for that as well. In addition to that, me and other partners in the finance space, we're forming this idea around a podcast that combines and talks about the intersectionality of hip hop music and venture capital, wealth creation. And again, one of the things, I think, me growing up in the '70s, you remember all of our favorite artists, Rakim, Big Daddy Kane, if you want to go even Schoolie D from the Philly side, to the Feel the First crew in Dallas and all these other folks. And we couldn't even imagine that how hip hop has been so ubiquitous now in everything that we see, and how you have like Jay-Z and others who are literally billionaires because they've taken that music, they've taken that influence, they've taken that branding and expanded that. And so the podcast is definitely talking about that way of getting new artists like Big Us Plug and others to think about ways early on of how to diversify and early on use it. It's the same with the athletes. I think the NBA, out of all of the sports leagues in our country, I think the NBA and the NBA players, and shout out to the NBA Players Association, I think they've done a really great job of educating those athletes and saying there's going to be a life after basketball. Similar to artists, there's going to be a life out music, to where you need to prepare for it. And how do you look at deals and not just being an investor, but actually be an owner and build things. And so I think that's important to me. And again, purpose for me is loving the intersectionality of music, of venture, entrepreneurship, and technology, and globalism as well.
Man. Yeah. Hey, I caught that. Thanks for sure. Hey, that makes sense. But thanks for sharing that with us on this podcast, the Power of People Show.
And Smart Mom, I didn't tell you first because it came out. So definitely, this is definitely something to where,
No,
as people hear this who may know me in the industry might gasp that I'm definitely not doing it anymore at this point.
so what making you, kind of lean that way and eventually decided to go ahead and push the button on this?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, again, and it's funny, the questions and the sequence that you've asked about the last 5 years would transform me to the intersectionality of hip hop and venture capital. I think those things converging with did it. I think, again, when I had my transplant, I began to realize the finality of life. I realized the finite nature, that there's only so much time you have. And I was blessed to have a second life, so I'm blessed to have a rebirth. And so that rebirth is one of the things that was constantly in my mind about one of the things I want to rebirth. And so there was a lot of changes I made in my life. For example, I stopped drinking when I got sick. And so I haven't had a sip of alcohol in a number of years.
You're a vegetarian, right? I mean, a vegan, right?
You
Or a
know,
vegetarian. I'm trying to still figure it out.
and with having kidney disease, for me, it was a little bit difficult. So I definitely stopped eating red meat and beef. I've been focused on pescatarian with a chicken diet. So fish and chicken has been it. But I definitely would say, for anybody listening that's growing up in Texas, veggies were like you would get mashed potato here and there, but that would be a small part, but the protein would be big. And I
Yeah.
think I've definitely changed that and changed the scope of that too, and looking at how your plate, even your plate making of it is more veggies than carbs and protein, and protein still is important to it, but making sure you're getting at your fruits and veggies. But yeah, so a lot of those changes from what I put on my body to what I put inside of my body to what my body is doing was part of that change. And I think this media outlet, and again, shout out to some great partners I have. I have great partners. There's companies like that we ended up starting. I'm a founding advisor of a company called Clean Energy Culture, clean with a K and culture with a K, of course, for the noobs. Uh,
Okay.
was looking at the intersectionality of music and climate, so we put out music on that end. Partners there like Micah Hawthorne to this TV show play that we're doing with my partner John Reed and We Are Sky, the great firm, to this podcast, Bars and Sense is what it's called. Well, a good friend David Russell, who's in the private equity space, and so all these things has just given me these outlets that have been there, but now it's a great time to utilize the outlets for the things they need to be utilized for.
Awesome. Awesome, man. Hey, man, don't forget about us over here. Hey, hey, we're definitely enjoying, this opportunity as well.
Absolutely.
So with all of those in this venture capital space, tell me what was one of your favorite moments or someone that you work with that it really inspired you, that was inspirational to you, inspired you in that professional space that you had a great moment and that you just reminisce and it can always bring you back to the beginning of time.
Yeah, well, definitely. I think there are two. I think number one, people don't realize, and I think that it's interesting when you sit back and I'll start giving these names of Charles King. I mentioned Rashawn Williams, Chris Lyon, Lo Tony. All these names I'm mentioning are all members of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. So it gave me great pride and pleasure that there were so many of us in the venture capital space that were really got great black men making great moves from there's a fund called Slauson Ventures here in Southern California, where both of the members are members of our fraternity. One member is an Indian American guy who's also a member of Kappa Alpha Psi, who went to UC Santa Barbara. But so, I love the fact that we've had these men of achievement in this space of venture capital that influenced me. And I always talk about my membership in it. Definitely with me chartering a few chapters within our fraternity. Then I think the second thing that was really influential to me, I've made some really great investments. I'm really proud of the things, and not just from a monetary standpoint that we made it and we got a return, but mostly because it changed the way people think about. Like one of the favorite investments I've made was this company that was building electric airplanes, and it's called Amp Air. And we hear a lot about electric vehicles, electric EVs, and things like that, but electric aviation is changing it. And I'm proud that one of the investments that we made when I was in Los Angeles Clean Tech Incubator did that. But I think one of the last, I would say, the most important investment that I made was in, again, actually to our fraternity brother, Josh Aviv. If you have an electric vehicle, folks who've ever been in an electric vehicle, it's a great thing. I have a BMW iPhone myself, but I think that, what he built with this idea of on-demand charging, and it's great. And so for me, you know, seeing this guy that I met, gay relationship, I actually brought him into the fraternity. He's a
Yeah.
member. He was initiated at Commerce Greenville Alumni Chapter in Texas. And I'm just proud when I see him on CNBC, when I see him on Bloomberg doing interviews, because again, his success, it impacts my success. And that's great because from an investor standpoint, but even outside of the investor standpoint, outside of the fraternity standpoint, it's just great to see another black man on television where the news cycle is not about the bad things he's done, but about the change he's making in the world. So that's what venture capital is to me, and that's why it's been important.
That's great, inspirational. Yeah, because I kept up with Josh. I've seen Josh, and just to be in our circle of friends at the frat, man, he has an amazing story himself. It's something that he just tried to do on his own out of a simple idea. What it was back from college, when he was in college the days, and started out of his own pocket, right? And then, so it's in the clean energy space, right? In a
Yeah.
clean energy space, would you say, and that how important would you say venture capital in the clean energy space? How important is that it plays a part into the world right now? Because some people don't understand like what Taj do when it comes to not just venture capital. You're an economist too.
Yeah.
You're an economist,
Yeah.
and how that all plays a part and why it's important. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, first I would say, and again, for those who do know venture capital, I've always said that I'll give this analogy. And again, I love giving analogies is that if you think about a bus or you think about a plane, you think about a car, these are all things that take you from point A to point B. Bus, train, plane, automobile, right? Those are things that take you from point A to point B. And each of those things can be thought of as like technology startups or startup companies or things that you're building. Now, each of those things, planes, trains, and automobiles, all take different types of fuel. You can't put train fuel in a jet. You can't put auto fuel in a jet, and vice versa. And so I look at the fuel as that's what venture capital, that's what private equity is, that is investment banking, that is CDFIs, that is foundations and MRI, PRI investing. What I'm trying to say is that venture capital is not the only way to build a company and to finance a company. There are several different things out there. So that's the first thing entrepreneurs should think about and know that you can do. Even on the podcast side, I think people see a lot of things like Patreon as a really great tool to finance the podcast because it's crowdfunded, supported by the
All
people who are
right.
listening. And so I think that to your question, yes, venture capital plays a huge role because venture capital is about risk. We take early risk in founders at the idea stage, and then they continue their risk until they have a financial expectation within either acquisition or listed on the stock exchange. So venture capital plays a huge role in that. But so does private equity, so does loans, such as angel investors, such as crowdfunding sites. So, one thing that has changed since I've been in the industry is this thing called equity crowdfunding. Some people may think about that and they think about Kickstarter, and that's a little bit different. Kickstarter is that you're buying a product, so you get something in return. But when you think about programs and platforms such as Republic, such as WeFunder, such as Start Engine, those companies allow you to be kind of a mini investor yourself. You're investing in these companies, using their platform to invest, sometimes as little as $50, and that it allows you to do what we do. And what we do really is that we're taking other people's money, so it's a bigger pool of money, but we're saying that I believe in the person, I believe in their idea, and I believe in the market. And those three things are be things that will necessitate a successful startup company or entrepreneurship endeavor. And so I think, again, if you're talking about the clean energy space or any other space as well, private equity is a part of the capital stack and successful factor in that space.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. Good. Information. Good. Thanks for sharing that. If you could, so what? So let's think about it like this. So say someone started from ground up. What? How would you advise them if you was giving them information, right? And they were saying, I don't really know how to go about funding, where to get started, or to go find someone that could help them. Like, so with that, from that venture capital or going to private equity or going there and they have no idea. Just say they don't have the information. They don't even know where to get started, period. They just know they're an entrepreneur. They got a great idea and they about to they know this idea could work if they had the right people to help them.
Yeah. Well, first thing I would say is prove the idea that it can work, right? A lot of people have ideas. I always say that the good ideas have many fathers, but the bad ideas are the orphans, meaning that everybody thinks they have a good idea until they realize it's a bad idea.
Right.
And what that means is that before you start seeking funding, all those other things, test your idea, not just with people you know, not just with your friends and family, but total strangers. The first things first that we always talk about when people are getting funding is look for the free money first, because what people don't realize is venture cap, we just don't give away money. We give away money for part of equity ownership, similar to private equity. So what that means is that it's very expensive money. And there's a phrase we often use where we say debt is cheaper than equity. Equity is the private equity, is venture capital, alternative investments. That's that capital. Whereas debt, you think about it as loans, everything else. Your loan might be a certain percentage where we're taking a huger part of your company and not just a percentage of what you borrowed. So I would say that's the thing to look at the difference between venture capital and everything else is, that should be something when you're ready, go to it. But in the beginning, the first thing you should do is test your model, test your MVP, your most valuable product. And what you're doing with that MVP, you're saying, I believe X, if I do X, Y will happen. If I create X, Y will happen. If I have a service for X, Y will happen. And from that, you could do, and like right now, in the 90s when we started, it was much difficult, but now you can do Google Forms, you can send emails out, you can do surveys, you can do all these things to get a lot of data on whether or not what you're building makes sense for the market that you want to go after and understanding that. So I think that's really great. And even before you get to, back in the day, and I would say back in the day being, 10 years ago during the Obama administration, those sites, like I mentioned, Republic, those equity crowdfunding act sites like Republic, WeFunder, and Start Engine, a lot of us in our industry kind of looked down on it because we were like, okay, you have these novice investors coming in, they don't really understand how to gauge, and now it's a different story. So I say all that to say that even before you start seeking out venture capital funding, go there as well. That's a great tool to utilize to say, this idea, all right. And some of these sites allow you to start from the MVP phase where you're not pre-revenue and those things as well. And then lastly, I would say, I want to shout out a good brother who's actually based in Texas as well. He was the founder of a company called Upsie, UPSIE,
Okay.
Clarence, but shout out to Clarence. And Clarence is literally right now, as we speak, he's creating this tool to answer these questions that people might have about venture capital. He's one of the great examples for me of the type of funds that we would invest in that I would like. He
Okay.
started as a founder. He understood the ups and downs of being a founder because it's not always pretty, definitely not always pretty. And he ended up going into venture capital with a firm called True Ventures. And so he's been making investments himself as a VC himself. And so he's on TikTok. If you look up Clarence Bethea, Bethea, he's on TikTok, and he's literally giving the game on TikTok. He's giving advice about venture capital, how to approach VCs,
We
how
probably
to
need to get him on here one day.
well.
Yeah.
And so I think that's an important part of it. That is, part of it as well. So I'll say it again, test your product and find out if it makes sense on that end. Number two, look at other platforms before you start getting into the expensive money, like other grants and things of that nature that's literally free. That might be in your city, that might be in your state, that might be federally. And then go into, even look at those equity crowdfunding sites, like I mentioned, and then go after, if you want to, VC or venture capital. And at that stage, you'll look at funds that may do what's called pre-seed, which is early before you have the idea, or
Right.
seed, and so forth. And so I think it's a lot. And again, there's even CDFIs, community development finance institutions, that are out there to help and assist as you're building businesses. Because not all businesses may be valid for venture capital. If you look at that plane, trains, and automobiles, I would think that the plane might be venture capital suitable because we want to see companies that shoot up, you know. But you may have a really great company that might be like, like a bus. They're just steady and just making money from out the gate. I was going to shout out Turkey Leg Hub, but given the problem they're having, I'm not going to use that example right now. But that's a perfect
They
example of a
still
company
don't do,
that may not
they
necessarily
struggling
need
right now.
funding, had it been ran correctly from whatever, but it's a company that made revenue. Or even look at companies that, I think the Daiquiri Shop is something that's in Dallas now.
Something simple.
I think a brother from Cap Alpha Science owns a company like that. So those are the examples of companies that you can build that don't necessarily require venture capital funding. And then I mentioned Patreon. If anybody listened to the podcast, Joe Budden, another perfect example where it's not about venture capital funding from him. It's been about sponsorships, brand deals, and in Patreon as the way that he's been making revenue with his podcast.
Yeah, that's one thing that I'm glad you said that, because that's one thing that I eventually will need to look into as far as where I'm going with this Power of the People show, right? For
Yeah.
myself, and I try to take this from what I see it as. I think this is a good product. I've obviously I got people with great information as you, but that's just more of my resources, right? The resources and just learning how to put those resources to work, make my resource and put my resources to work for me and opportunities like this. So let's have a little fun. Have you experienced any type of adversity yourself it's been in your profession? What kind of type of adversity you experience and how you overcome
Adversity?
it? Yeah, adversity.
Oh yeah. I think, there's a lot of adversity. I mean, of course, one of the things that's evident a lot is this industry was not, uh, we joke and say it didn't have a lot of color into it, both literally and figuratively. So it wasn't a lot of us in it early on. So it wasn't a lot of that examples. And I think, what that translates to is a lot of times, back then you would have a lot of disconnects because, some people get opportunity that others don't necessarily get. But I think, that's changes as we get more people in that look like us, they give these opportunities. And so that's changing. But I think that's been one of the things that's been really interesting is the adversity of it and the race has been a part of that adversity. I think another thing too is that, we talk about the way I presented myself from the hat to the jewelry to everything else is that it's for me, it's about authenticity. And a lot of times, when people are being their authentic selves, that may not translate to a lot of things that some people in certain industries like venture capital may see. And I think for me, I've overcame that adversity by realizing that money would come and go, but your dignity, your purpose are the things that need to be constant in your life. And so when I began to realize that and realize that not, it's a phrase that we hear in the South all the time, especially if you play dominoes, not all money is good money. And realizing that in the very beginning for me was one of the ways that I overcame a lot of adversity, where it's been a challenge around what do you do with the decisions that you make as well.
Yeah, how's the family doing it?
Yeah, the kids are great, man. I'm blessed to have three young adults. My youngest just is attending Pepperdine University, where I graduated from my MBA from. And so I'm really proud of her. And she actually went to college while she was in high school, like I did. I went to Cedar Valley College while I was in high
My
school.
chest stuck up a little bit when
And
you
so when I
said that.
came to college, that was the reason I was able to pledge as a freshman because I had college credits, and so I was a that was second semester freshman going in fall '93. I graduated in '93, and I was pledging in '93. So I'm just proud that that same track that she took, and then my son who's in the music space, he's a composer. He's at the University of Southern California. So again, proud of him that he was able to make the transition. Went to college courses while he was there too. And then lastly, my oldest, Ava, she went to art school and definitely has been down that way and then that path in art and in education now. So but family is important. I think that I'm proud again. We talk about the generational pull and uh, how the next generation, you want them to do better than you. But I think that for me, also is understanding that the next generation will see things totally different. Like I don't think my parents could imagine the work that I do, and I know I won't want to even imagine the work that my children would do. So I'm really excited and proud about that.
Yeah. You kind of live through their lenses sometimes, as is like you said, through the art of your daughter and your son and the composing music at USC. Can you only imagine if you was at USC and they had but they got the new art school with Dr. Dre and
Yeah, yeah.
uh, uh
I,
and that guy?
yeah.
Man, can you only imagine if you was in that?
Yeah, I'm living vicariously through them. All of them, again, for me, I went into finance. I love music. I love art, but I went into finance because I needed to, because of money, right? I wanted a career. And I'm just proud again that they're now into these spaces. They understand the aspect of business because, I used to take my kids around with me in strollers when they were young to business, when I was doing business deals and meetings because it was just so expensive for childcare, especially having three that are 2 years apart. But I'm so happy that they are realizing that monetization matters. And I think this whole generation, I mean, shout out to Gen Z, shout out to Gen A's. One of the things I think that they understand fully, and I love this, is that how to monetize. Because I think going back to hip hop, one of the things that we didn't do early on was monetize the culture but control it more importantly. And I think now a lot of young people are realizing, whether it's through the financial crisis that occur and they see things happen to their parents and to COVID and everything else, is that they need to have control over their finances. And so I think that's fundamentally changing a lot of things in this country.
Man, that's another conversation we're gonna have to have off of here. Well, you talking about that? That's another thing that's been on my mind. But I do want to tell you, tell Luke, um, it's kind of seeing where he's going. It's a good journey, right? It could be inspirational. Well, I say that because, like I said, young people are learning your potential and things like that. Have you ever watched the Quincy Jones documentary on Netflix before? So I was
Yeah,
just,
yeah,
man. So
yeah.
what I in that documentary, and I was thinking about how young Quincy was and how he just went out to the world, right? Then he went over He even went over to England, France, Paris, or whatever, and learned how
Mhm.
to score music, to learn as a young black man, right? I know a lot of people may not know that your son, he's write scores, right?
Yeah.
And I remember you was just sharing a piece of that and how happy you was about it. And, that was kind of crazy to see him at that age doing something. I tied those two. I was like, man, the only other person that I knew that has been one of the greatest producers or the greatest writers of all time, in my mind, from going from Dean Mark Camp Basie to all of the blues, all of the jazz. I'm even discovering Michael, then discovering Will, and
Mhm.
all the Fresh Prince, and writing all the old movies, and as for him directing, then going back and scoring everything itself based on what he learned from a white lady over there, overseas, right? To go back and doing that. Then to see his son do it, man, that inspired me, and it would kind of when I'm listening to music and just different things, random things pop up in my head, right? Like electricity, right? So when Saturday, I don't know, I think oh yeah, you remember when I just called you, I text you at the blue, like, what you doing right now? And you was like, I'm in a meeting, I'll hit you back. And well, electricity was going off, bing, 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 like that, right? So I was in a mood, and this Pharrell song popped up. It was just one of the way that Pharrell produces music. Some of it from moments, different moments, and to get me going, right? And it kind of motivated me, inspired me, and and I can only think of that movie, got the movie that he did with the girls. What is the girl's name? The one that did about space. He did the soundtrack for those. He wrote the scores and all of that for the soundtrack. So it started making me go down that rabbit hole, man. And I pulled up that whole soundtrack album for that movie. Man, I can't think of it with the black girls. It was Taraji, Joe Monet, and all of those. The song Freedom in it.
Yeah.
So he wrote those, and it's a very with the orchestra. It's with the orchestra, with the big score and all of that. And I was thinking about it. And it just started going down a rabbit hole, listening to all the different soundtracks. And I can only think about it. I was like, man, I was like, Taj's son does that. He just doesn't know how gifted he is. And I was like, so that's a great gift, man. And then that goes back to dad, man. You part of your journey and giving that tool to them.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I'll say this too. I think, you mentioned Quincy Jones, and definitely, my son, and it's interesting. He's taken it to the next level. Now, Quincy did movies, those sort of things. And, my son respects a lot of the Japanese composers that do the music for video games. And I never realized how much music has been in Japanese video games from even my day, Legend of Zelda, to so many others that's happening these
Man.
days. And I think it's interesting. But I think even for me, going from a music side, one of the documentaries that influenced me, and I would definitely suggest the audience take it if they can, is a movie on Netflix called The Black Godfather, and it's about a guy by the name of Clarence Avant who recently passed away. His wife was here in LA as well, passed away prior. But Clarence was very instrumental in the music space. He was a guy behind the scenes making a lot of things happen. And I love this fact there's this deal of calling give first. And he was definitely one of the people who I think when I think about the term give first, he was there. Now he got paid for what he did, but his goal, similar to me from a venture capital space, was for not for me to be famous, put my name out there, but for me to elevate my investments, my founders, people like Josh. And so a lot of the work that I've done over the years, a lot of my inspiration, influence have come from Clarence Avant, and I've modeled a lot of my work on that. So yeah, I think the idea of art imitating life, life imitating art. I think that all these things are influential for us. There's this term in economics we call it being the organic intellectual, and what that means is taking the world, being influenced by the world community around you, and then giving influence back. And so definitely, I think from his inspiration from Quincy Jones to my inspiration with Clarence Avant. I think all of us can take that in many different forms that we see.
Nice, nice, nice. Definitely. Yeah, I know we're running. And not trying to hold you, but I'm enjoying this conversation.
Yeah,
I never want to get your time. And I
yeah.
know you're a busy man. So if if you had a limited resources and you could do something with it, what would you do?
Good,
What
good
would you do,
question.
man? Yeah, give me
Good
something.
question.
What would you do with these resources?
Now, good question. And the reason I said a good question again, I remember working at UBS, and we had a number that we call I'll say, forget you number, right? A number that would make you say, forget work, I'm not doing anything. And so, a lot of us, I was talking about in the nine figures. I was like, yeah, 100, 200 mil, like I'll be good.
What?
You were like, 300 mil a bill, like people talking about billion. I remember this one guy, he said his number was more, which was so interesting to me because it's like he was saying he has this insatiable appetite. So I think that was one of the reasons that made me say I probably need to get out of here, because that shows me that, yeah, it's good to do, but money is simply a tool. And I think, to your question about if there were resources, financial resources and others, me going through what I went through, and knowing that on the Black community, we have so many different diseases and healthcare issues that we faced, from access to food, to all those things. I would definitely be in that space. And again, that's environmental. There's a school where I grew up in the Wilma Hutchins area called Paul Quinn. It's a HBCU.
Nice.
And shout out to, again, another fraternity brother is the president there of
Yeah.
Kappa Alpha Psi. And they did something that I think is unbelievable in the state of Texas. If you know Texas, it's God, family, football, and sometimes football comes before family. But they literally took the football field and turned it into a community garden. And so for me, what that meant was, now that I'm in California, I have access to, we joke, there's a store called Erewhon that has like these $25 smoothies and craziness and
Yeah.
stuff. And it's interesting. Last night I had, no dairy dessert, which is interesting. It was just nuts and all this sort of stuff. It was great. But I think that, again, what I would do is ensure that a lot of communities, not just in our communities in Southern Dallas, but in so many different other Black communities, have access to great healthcare, they have access to great food, because I think those two things stunt innovation. Again, I already told you, and I mentioned my cousin JR, the ideas are there in our communities, but a lot of times those ideas don't even get off the ground, regardless of funding. They don't get off the ground because people's lives are cut short from health.
Okay.
People's lives are cut short becomes a necessity to do things because they need to make money. So I think that, having access to great health, having access to great food, and then having access to capital to start ideas on a clean slate is what I would definitely put my resources to.
Nice. Yeah, yeah. I know you was talking about Paul Quinn, and you mentioned it, and about the gardening or whatever, man. Like I was speaking with you earlier before I got a chance to get back with you. I was just volunteering at the church that I attend. Besides Paul Quinn, like you said, to turn the football field to a garden. This is the only other place that I have seen that turned something to a garden. This church that we recently joined. We've been looking for a home church over here. It's called New Life Community Church over here in Little Inn. Actually, they have sit on like 21 acres. They turned like the size of a football field on the land to a community garden, and they take just volunteers in, and they go groceries and food to give back to the community, because there's not too many people that have gardens or fresh produce. And it was just crazy that you just mentioned that. I didn't ever think about that. I didn't ever think about that again, direct food. And I know, like, when you say you're from Dallas, I think it in Bonton, where they started to say
Bonton
that
Farms.
at
Yep.
Bonton Farms, when he was talking about it's like a food desert over there in that area, and how important it was to bring. I think they started a small community over there, a small
Mhm.
community garden and whatever, and starting to getting some kind of funding without having any grocery stores in the neighborhood and stuff like that.
Yeah. And that's climate. So when I talk about being a climate investor, when I talk about being an environmental investor, that not only includes electric vehicles, electric airplanes, and not only includes solar panels and wind turbines. It includes alternative materials, like I mentioned, the hats and waist. It includes, using bamboo for clothing, like on the shirt I have on some bamboo clothing and silk cravat. It also means agriculture. It means, utilizing things where you don't have pesticides that can cause health issues. And you're learning about things like crop rotation. And it's interesting, we talk about your grandfather and his probably grandfather understood sustainable farming back then, but they didn't call it sustainable farming because it was just farming. But so now when you're coming to the space and you're doing these things, it makes sense. And it is a space to where you're making these things occur. So that's one of the things that's really interesting about it as well.
Nice, nice, nice. Yeah, definitely dope, dope. And just say my godmother, her husband and his three brothers, They actually have a black-owned farm in Louisiana called Three Muse Farm. You probably I don't know if you ever heard of it. Three Muse Farm, man, they are dope. They older brothers. Took out, I think after their dad and whatever, only one of the black farms that's left where they do. They give out scholarships. They actually like work with the school and allow for the kids to come out to the farm where they got cow. Then they grow all kind of farming. They start their own production and if meat, vegetables, and all of that, and
Yeah.
natural upcoming
Yeah.
farming. You definitely should check them out. Three Muse Farm. And when I saw that, man, that has been another inspirational thing. I'm just telling you, man, you have a real print out here on that global and climate and venture capital thing that you have done. You have opened my eyes to look at things different around me and seeing that it's more of us in doing things. It's just less of us know. The less of us know and don't know where to look to see those
Yeah.
things. And I'm very proud of that. If you ever get a chance, look up the Three Muse Farm.
We'll
Three
do.
Muse Farm, man. That's
We'll do. For the
like
audience as well.
yeah. Anybody else in the audience, go look up Three Muse Farm out of Louisiana. I think it's it's on the southeastern side of Louisiana. Like I don't want to say Shreveport or Ruston, and this part of from us is East Texas, farther going into Louisiana area over there. But definitely, you'll definitely be very surprised when you see it. It's good guys, great opportunities, and to invest in that, or anybody that's want to go look out for black-owned farmers. It's not that many of us out there, and not many that is out there left, but we are out there in all the kind of fields. So, man, give me some fun. What's a fun night out for Taj? What is something fun Taj
Yeah.
like to do? What's fun, man? What is something about
Again,
you?
music is my mistress and my passion. I recently went to the Cleo Soul concert at the Hollywood Bowl. For
What?
those, check out Cleo Soul, CLEOSOL. Phenomenal singer. Seeing her live is just great. And that's for me, that's fun. That's really going out hearing live music, hearing new artists,
You
really kind of
dancing now?
creativity. So I think that's important.
Are you dancing now?
Dancing, hey man, we're first of all, yes, definitely that's it. But for those who may not know, look up the Hollywood Bowl in LA. It's a phenomenal venue to hear music, and so definitely, I think that's a space I love to hear. It's expansive, it's a great amphitheater, and it's just great to hear that sound in the open air
Yeah.
that you'll see there too.
All right. Awesome. Now, what would be if you could give back some of the keys of success to the people, to keys of success, or to leave something with the people? What would you leave with them? Give them a little something to leave with the people.
I appreciate that. And number one, I would say, Ray, this has been a great opportunity and conversation that we always have, and it's great. And I think before I talk about those keys, I would say that, for people listening, we don't need any more VCs. We need more innovators. We need more entrepreneurs. We need more people who are doing this work and who are thinking about new ideas and coming out there. So we need those. And so definitely that's one of the things I want to encourage. But I think on the success piece of that, for me, I think always be inquisitive, always learning, always reading, whatever it is, listening to listen to podcasts, discovering things. Get your Columbus on without
Okay.
being extractive, without taking. But what I mean by that is go outside of your realm, leave Spain, go outside of your neighborhood, outside of your circle, and grow and learn and think about things. Like I said, I never would have got down the pathway I'm in venture capital and climate if I had not been inquisitive and always thinking about what's new and being, taking those risks. You don't have to take the risk I did of moving to a whole new state and just dropping in. But I definitely say that understanding the idea that things that come to you may come from other sources. And I gave the example of Motown and the auto industry. So I definitely think that being intellectually curious is number one. I think number two, keeping a good network. One of the things I would say, your network is your network. And so what that means is that it's not just about gathering. Again, we don't want to be Columbus. It's not just about gathering people, but it's also having this exchange and giving first. It's like a bank account. You want to deposit more into relationships than you withdraw. When you have a bank account, you withdraw more than what you have. You have an NSF. You don't want to have NSF in the relationships you build. So you want to always make sure you give back. So the intellectual curiosity, that idea of giving back and being your network is important. Kind of thing lastly is believing something greater than yourself. During my journey, I had faith that, that things were gonna happen the way they were supposed to happen, and my steps were ordered. And so I think that a lot of times we tend to forget, and whatever faith it is, be it Christianity, be it Islam, or anything else, that, I think faith is very important. And again, even if a person is not a believer in anything on it, faith in something greater than yourself, whatever that name may be, is important as you go on that journey. So I would say those are the three things of success for me: being intellectually curious, understanding that your network is your net worth, and having a belief in something greater than yourself, even if that thing that is greater is a purpose.
Awesome. Man, you hit that nail on the head right there. Great info. Anything that you want to talk about, that you want to put out there that I may not mention, that I ask you want to leave with the people? I mean, something that you just might want to just get off your chest,
No, no, man.
share.
I think we covered a lot. I definitely, between, like I said, my journey on it. One thing I would say is that I have been blessed to leave the country a number of times, the work I do, and I would say now I'm spending more time on the continent in East Africa and Kenya, Nairobi, Kenya, Zanzibar, Tanzania, and then Dubai in the UAE. And one of the things I've learned is that, we as a people, we're talking about, humans, number one, we're greater together than apart. So that's number one, is that, we to understand that we are, a lot of things that can change the world, a lot of ideas can change if we collaborate and be more collaborative. And we've seen that with the pandemic. The pandemic is a perfect example of how we come together as humans to move things forward. But I think that me traveling has showed me a lot of things, that life doesn't have to be the way that we assume it to be. We don't have to work until we're 65. We can't enjoy our fruits of our labor, that we can understand that purpose is important, that we can really kind of think about the things that we're doing. And so I think that's been, one of the journeys for me that's been really special. And
Climate. Talking about weather wise, but just the climate of the economy, is crazy right now, right? How do you see AI changing the changing the climate of the economy of the world, and how it's coming to play? How important is it? uh, do you think how important, or what effects that it would have on us? Then we could just talk about how the AI, how Drake used it to destroy Kendrick Lamar.
I love how, for those that don't know, the audience, we had this discussion where I mentioned, again, I'm a huge Pusha T fan for obvious reasons, like I mentioned, which in turn means I'm a Clips fan,
Here you go.
which also means that I understand that Pusha T had literally destroyed Drake to begin with. And then of course you came along and did the similar thing. And, so, my friend here, and again, I like Drake. I like when he sings,
Hey, you see what
you know,
Consequence said lately?
but I would say that AI is important. And I think, again, AI for me, my vantage point is that AI requires power, resources. Remember what I said climate investing or climate tech is about utilization of your resources. So I think that's important. But I think how that would change a lot of things that we do. I think artificial intelligence is important. But the thing that we need to really be on and understand is what's quantum computing, which is the next stage beyond AI. And I think, there's even one of our other fraternity brothers in this space, even talking about it right now, wrote a book. And I'll share with you to share with your audience about quantum computing. But I think AI, is important because it's given us access to do tools, things faster and at light speed. So for me, again, as a person to study economics, there are certain equations that may take me a while to do, whereas a computer and AI, utilizing AI, can do it instantaneously. And so I think that's changing some things. And I think for us as people as in this space, we didn't understand that. I think that the one thing that we have an advantage over the AI is creativity and love. And what I mean by that is that when you love something, you tend to focus on it. You tend to try to find things to help it, whether it's your grandparents, your family, your community, your hood, all these other things. And I think that that's what separates us from machines, whether those machines are the computer machines or the physical machines like Tesla's trying to do. So I definitely think that while jobs were changing, legal jobs would change because of AI. So many other jobs would change to AI. Any type of repetition, but beyond repetition, thing what is extracting data and presenting that, I think will change. So I think that that's a good thing for us because that's going to allow us as humans, again, the collaborative piece of that, to think about what do we want to do now? What is our role as computers are doing a lot of the heavy lifting? And maybe it might get it back where we get back to being artistic, like my children, or we're looking at things of being creative, like how Shakespeare created things that influenced all of us from literature, how Mozart and some of the others created things that influenced us. Quincy Jones created things, James Baldwin. And so I think the future AI is interesting. it's unpredictable, but it's coming and it's here.
Yeah. You think it you think it'll have any, negative effect on humans,
Yeah,
the
of
society,
course,
or us, or how will it affect, us
of course.
in that
I
way?
mean, everything has a positive and everything has an impact, and it's positive or negative. Whether it's, again, the abundance of food that we have access to food is great here in this country versus other countries. But the reason we have access to food is because of non-sustainable growing methods and chemicals in our food and things of that nature. And so I think that with AI, it's the same thing. You'll have these great tools that can be used to make things go faster and more
Yeah.
efficient, but also too, we have to be cognizant of their true impact. And so I think that it's important for us and people in the communities to understand it, to utilize it. You don't want to be Luddites. Luddites people who just eschew technology, but you definitely want to understand it. And I think again, this is where opportunities comes because there's going to be some people who might say, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. Um, we might need to think about this differently when it comes to utilizing AI for this. So I get it. One of the great sites in California is saying Waymo. Waymo is the cars by Google that are self-driving. For us, it's ubiquitous. Like after this podcast, I'm leaving for Santa Monica for an event. You see all these cars where there's no one in the front seat because it's all autonomous driving. And it's just interesting. And again, that AI's effort is really impacting the things we do in our daily life, and it's so common for us now. Even I mentioned Tesla and their Android that is a physical robot. We're
Mm.
going to see that he's
Scary.
selling the Optimus and he's saying he's selling it. So we're going to see that more. When I was growing up, you had the Jetsons and they had, the robot as a housekeeper. And, I have a Roomba that's literally a robot sweeper, broom.
Yeah,
And so
but
I think you're going to see that a lot more in the space as well. And, again, technology is important. AI is important. And it is about the ebb and flow of how do you go too far versus how do you go in it. And I think the same thing about social media. Social media is good. It gives awareness. It's connected people, but also it can be a time consumption to stop us from creating. And so I think that it's, everything is important and everything has balance.
what about in the music industry? What do you think about AI in the music industry?
Yeah, as the gentleman that was previously mentioned utilized it.
Goat, one of the
I think it's
goats.
going to be really interesting. You had Timbaland who signed an AI artist that got a little bit flack from that. Again, for me, that's why I say I think creativity should not be something that should definitely be more human. And I think whether it means writing scripts, writing lyrics, but I think again it's a balance, right? Like I think it's very creative that the artist Drake utilized the AI to have those voices. It was very creative on it. But I think that again, music is something I love, and I think when I listen to music, it's more than just about lyrics. It is about understanding where the person's writing from. The person may be writing from a sense of pain, a sense of anger, a sense of joy. There's a song from Stevie Wonder that's called "Isn't She Lovely," and people may not realize it was about his daughter.
Oh,
And so
nice.
I think that music matters, and music is an emotional piece that makes us human. It separates us from music and emotion, I should say. It separates us from machines.
Nice, nice. I agree with you. I have a lot to talk about on that, but we'll discuss that another
Yeah.
time. We're running a little long, and I know you got places to be, man. I'm definitely, Taj. It's been great, man. I'm really happy to have you and have this conversation. To have this conversation, inviting you to the Power of the People show to come back to grace us, giving us some little exclusive information. So tell the people what's going on with you now, where they could catch you up, drop some of your social media, or how to follow you along your journey.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And again, it was a pleasure being on the podcast. I appreciate, having the opportunity to talk to your audience, talk to you, and just kind of talk and just have this thing what we do often so people can kind of drop in on some of our conversations that we have. But again, thank you for inviting me and being on here. Like I mentioned, Include Ventures, which is the venture fund I co-founded with two other partners. We finished deploying our funds there. So I'm kind of taking a back seat there. I'll still be venture partner, which means like a partner emeritus, but no longer really kind of making investments on that end, even myself in the investment space. And I also manage a group of grant funding that we gave funding to a number of different universities through an organization called Jobs for the Future, funded by Aries Charitable Foundation, which is a private equity fund in their foundation. And so gave it about gave out $5 million to a number of universities. It was a $19 million project that literally is preparing people for jobs of the future in the climate space. So I'm happy that's been deployed, that's being out there. And, now for me, it's really discovering, and like I mentioned, the creativity part of it, that I mentioned that I was so envious of my own children with Taj Media Holding. And so definitely be on the lookout for our newest podcast, Bars and Sense, for the show that we're producing. That'll be on social media in due time, and Clean Energy Culture. Check those folks out and the music we've done there. But people connect with me, can definitely connect with me on LinkedIn. It's the business social media. So definitely connect with me on there. And just look Taj Ahmad Eldridge and you'll see the hat. Definitely that'll be the first thing you'll see.
Yeah, nice, man. What was it, Taj? Once again, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Dr. Taj Eldridge.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you, Taj.
Alrighty.
Where them fans at? Where them fans at? Hit me one time. Oh, 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 I got my boots on.